Update: WRITETHRU 2 months after beginning global rollout, Fox's War for the Planet of the Apes planted its foot in China. The debut of $62.3 million on 30,000 screens scored the studio its biggest opening weekend ever in the Middle Kingdom. The result also pushed the Matt Reeves-directed threequel from Chernin Entertainment across the $400 million global mark, where the total to date sits at $432 million. The international box office cume is now $287.9 million. Warner Brothers. With a full weekend of $62.9 million in 21 markets, The Apes topped the sophomore session of New Lineup's hit Stephen King adaptation It, which fell a modest 37% from last weekend's debut to $60.3 million in 56 hubs. That includes a phenomenal start in Mexico, where there was no clowning around. It scored the biggest opening weekend ever for a horror title and WB's Best of 2017. The overseas cume is $152.6 million and the worldwide tally is $371.3 million. Elsewhere, this weekend saw the launch of Venice Charmer Victoria and Abdul $4.70 M10 markets and Venice Divider Mother $6 M16 markets, as well as the start of American Assassin and Alien Covenant made it to Japan with a good #1 start. Turning back to the China bow on WFDPOTA, it was up 42% on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and is 20% higher than Logan, another well-viewed recent Fox title. Dawn finaled north of $107 million in the PROC in 2014, while Rise of the Planet of the Apes rose to $31 million in pre-boom 2011. Sony Pictures WFDPOTA was dominant at 65% of local turnstiles, crimping the swing of last week's champ, Spider-Man: Homecoming. The latter was on far fewer screens. The web-slinger, however, crossed the $100 million threshold in China. NB China grosses on Hollywood Pix include the ticketing fee. In other milestones, Disney Pixar's Cars 3 crossed over the $200 million line internationally. Universal's American Made is nearing $50 million and Sony's The Emoji Movie is closing in on $100 million. Fox should have another big session next weekend as Kingsman: The Golden Circle rounds the globe. It's hitting most majors save China, Korea, Russia, France and Japan. The previous film grossed $286 million overseas, led by China, Korea and the UK. This one's ramped-up action sequences will be on 628 IMAX screens in 53 markets from the outset. There is no China date yet on the sequel. Hitman's Bodyguard will be new in the Middle Kingdom next frame. Also looking to click with international odds in the coming session will be Warner Brothers' The Lego Ninjago Movie, which is going out in several majors. Breakdowns on the above films and others have been updated below. New American Assassin. CBS Lionsgate's Michael Cuesta-directed counter-terrorism movie opened to $6.2 million in 41 markets during its initial run overseas. The UK and Australia were the only two majors in the mix, with $960,000 on 433 screens and $944,000 on 232s respectively. The UAE saw a #1 start and the Middle East ranks as the top place so far with $1.1 million. Key shots to come this week include France, Mexico and Brazil. This one's rolling out slowly offshore with releases through November. Mother Paramount, after dividing audiences at the Venice Film Festival, and as it pulled an F cinema score domestically despite solid response from critics, Darren Aronofsky's Mother set up house in 16 offshore markets with $6 million. It's coming in on par with Changeling and 20% below Prisoners on a like-for-like basis. The play is best in major cities, particularly in upscale theaters. France, where Autopix Find Favor opened to $1.3 million on 350 screens in third place. The movie has the press liking it slightly better than moviegoers with about 2.7 stars out of 5. The UK and Russia each brought in $1.1 million at 467 and 994 cinemas, respectively. The Russia bow was good for #2. In the UK, the Jennifer Lawrence Estara debuted at #3. Germany was next with $799,000 at 351 locations for #4, and Australia birthed $584,000 at 214 in 5th. The Thinker of a Film world premiered on the Lido earlier this month, and after the early morning press screenings saw a mix of reaction. Aronofsky said, "This is a roller coaster ride, only come on it if you're prepared to do the loop a few times." The next offshore plays a Brazil and Mexico this week. Victoria and Abdul Focus features another Venice world premiere. The Universal Focus period pick from Stephen Frears debuted in 10 markets this weekend with $4.7 million. The Judi Dench starrer about the eponymous queen and her relationship with an Indian Clark Ali Fuzzle rated number 2 in the UK with a solid $2.6 million, performing well against comps like Danish Girl and Atonement. Australia also landed number 2 with $1.5 million, at the same level as Dench's Philomena. Rounding out the top 5 starts in New Zealand $276,000, Poland $128,000 and the UAE $87,000. When it launched out of competition in Venice, notices were positive and awards chatter began for Dench. Based mostly on the real-life story which had been buried until 2010, the film's central relationship, while one of poetic love, friendship love, mother and son love rather than romantic love, Fuzzle said in Venice, scandalized the royal household as the queen near the end of her life. Next weekend, the film opens with the US and Canada in the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, Estonia, Hungary, Lithuania, Norway, Romania, Serbia, Montenegro and Slovenia. HOLDOVERSEXPANSIONSWAR for the Planet of the Apes 20th Century Fox finally riding into China. Fox Shnin's well-viewed threequel saw $62.3 million opening there, a strong start that is Fox's best ever weekend bow in the Middle Kingdom. The full frame was worth $62.9 million and sees the Apes top the international chart. In IMAX in China, WFDPOTA picked up $5 million on 437 screens. The full global box office is $432 million with $287.9 million overseas so far. The Matt Reeves-directed film captured a China start that was up 42% on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and is 20% higher than Logan. Dawn made it to north of $107 million in the PROC in 2014. Star Andy Serkis worked the Middle Kingdom via press phoners and recording greetings for this pick while Weta Digital made the trip to China. These apes have some runway ahead as next weekend, The Hitman's Bodyguard takes aim at China as do a host of local titles but no major Hollywood tentpole. The following weekend, Jackie Chan starrer The Foreigner gets its passport stamped in the Middle Kingdom. War still has Japan to release. Its offshore rollout pattern and strategy were different versus Dawn and Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And, while roundly lauded, it might have benefited from a later release date rather the initial middle of July launch. It should finish its run sandwiched between Dawn and Rise. IT New Line continuing to break records after its mega global opening last weekend. New Lineup's adaptation of Stephen King's It added 10 overseas markets this session for another $60.3 million. That takes the offshore cum to $152.6 million in 56 international hubs. The worldwide cum is $371.3 million. This weekend's drop was just 37% abroad. The Andy Muschietti-helmed Scara had a fantastic bow in Mexico where it dominated 90% of the top 5 movies with $13.85 million on 4,300 screens. This is the biggest opening weekend ever for a horror movie. They're at WB's Best of 2017 and the studio's number 3 all-time biggest in the market. The film also set a new record as the biggest September and R-rated IMAX opening ever in the market. The global IMAX cum is $18 million. Likewise, Sweden's bow $2.60 M186 screens set records for the best horror launch and WB's top 2017 debut frame. Further creating new thresholds for the biggest horror launch ever are Israel, Portugal, South Africa and Turkey. In holds, it dipped just 38% in the UK for a cum of $27.7 million for lead all markets. Australia floated its cum up to $11.8 million. The movie stayed number 1 and fended off 4 new opening picks for the honor. It also held number 1 in Russia with $13.8 million to date. Further no-ones were in horror-friendly markets: Brazil $10.9 million so far and Spain $7.2 million to date. Indonesia meanwhile dropped by just 1% to lift its cum to $4.1 million, and Holland deflated by only 15% for a $3.3 million total so far. There are still several markets to go, with France and Argentina launching next weekend and benefiting from the great momentum. Spider-Man: Homecoming. Sony's Marvel's reboot kicked up another $15.1 million this session in 43 markets. They were led by China, where Peter Parker swung the corner on $100 million for a cum of $105 million to date. The weekend was worth $14.7 million in the Middle Kingdom for a 79% drop. The Apes dominated play on 30,000 screens versus Spidey's 18,200. The international cum on SMH is $531 million. At $861 million worldwide, it will pass Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 this week to become the top superhero movie of the year so far. American-made Universal Pictures. Universal's Tom Cruise star is looking at $12 million in 53 markets this frame, as it gets up to $48.8 million in overseas sales so far. The real-life tale added 10 hubs this session, including #1 Beaux in France and French-speaking Switzerland. France grossed $1.8 million to open at the same level as American Hustle and The Equalizer. The top performer was Korea with $1.9 million at #3. There's a local movie sucking a lot of air out of that market, which is a big Cruise play, although this film is a different sort of offering than his last hookup with director Doug Liman on sci-fi pick Edge of Tomorrow. Italy debuted #4 with $1.1 million. Brazil landed #3 with $1.1 million, bigger than both Jack Reacher's Edge of Tomorrow and American Hustle. Mexico scored a #2 start with $441,000, while it was overwhelmingly the dominant title there, and Switzerland's take was $122,000, topping Argo, Jack Reacher and EOT. Other openings include the Philippines $373 No. 2 above comps, and Central America $247 No. 2. In the latter, the story is well known and that bodes well for next weekend when American-made opens in Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador and Venezuela. Further markets continue to roll out over the next 3 months. Cars 3. Disney Pixar's Cars 3 rode into Italy this session, helping to push the international cum over $200 million to $204.6 million. In total, the weekend was worth $6.1 million in 18 material markets for a global cum of $359.6 million. Revving engines in Italy. Lightning McQueen rolled to #1 with $4.1 million, a start that is 8% behind Monsters University. Still to come is Germany on September 28. Dunkirk. Christopher Nolan's epic sailed to $5.7 million in 48 markets this session. The total offshore box office on the Warner Brothers hit is $323.2 million, and the worldwide cum is now $508.3 million. Japan is in its second session with a cum to date of $7.8 million. The weekend was a slight 37% drop at #2. The top 5 markets are the UK $72.8 million, China $50.2 million, Korea $21.7 million, France $21.1 million and Australia $18.3 million. Baby Driver. Sony Pictures careening to its final markets this session. Sony Tristram CS Baby Driver raced off with another $5.1 million in on 1,900 screens in 50 hubs. The Edgar Wright picture now has an international cum of $113 million. Korea was a solid start at #2 with $3 million on 600 screens, including previews and behind local title Memoir of a Murderer. The Emoji Movie. Sony as it approaches the $100 million international mark. Sony's The Emoji Movie applied itself with $4.9 million more in 53 markets this session. The overseas cum is now $95 million. Australia debuted at #2 with $1.8 million, including previews on 328 screens. That doubled the opening of Smurfs: The Lost Village. Still to come are Italy and France on the title that now has a worldwide cume of $178.9 million. Despicable Me 3 Illumination Universal's animated hit keeps on going, adding another $4.2 million in 44 markets this session. That takes the overseas total to $753.8 million and the global kitty to $1.015 billion. Italy was the top holdover this session with a total of $20 million after 4 weekends, and Japan, where it was number 3 in the 9th frame, is now at $63 million. 3 German Marks is the number 6 animated movie ever at the worldwide box office. To top the number 5 movie, Zootopia, it would need another $8.8 million. Misc updated CUMESNOTABLES 20th Century Fox Annabelle Creation WB $4.1 million international weekend 60 markets $191.2 million international Chameleon Covenant Fox $2.6 million international weekend Japan only 8% bigger than Mad Max Fury Road $162 million international QMED Dark Tower SNY $1.2 million international weekend 53 markets $60.3 million international QME Girls Trip Uni $1.1 million international weekend 11 markets $18.5 million international QMED Beguiled Uni $600,000 international weekend 25 markets $13.2 million international Kami Atomic Blonde Unisa $600,000 international weekend 21 markets $43.9 million international Cume.